Hello, everybody. It is the 30th of April. How did another month just disappear like that? Ray's in the house. Hi to Rave. We've got people coming in from all over the world, and I'm not surprised because we've got an amazing show for you today. We're going to be talking today about how you build a global mobility program from scratch, which is a really exciting thing. I mean, some people just love the idea of being able to do it. Other people I know might dread the idea of doing it. But we've got our special guest is Amanda Santamour of Klaviyo, who's done that not once, but in fact, she's done it twice. She's built a global mobility program from scratch. How cool is that? So we're going to be having a whole session with her talking about how you build a global mobility program, really just from the very beginning. And then, well, you know how it works, actually. Join in the conversation, everybody. Tell us who you are, where you are, write in the comments box. We are live now. We are live on YouTube. We are live on LinkedIn, and we will have a podcast out there on Spotify or wherever else you want, but we're out there on Spotify. You can also get all your CPE codes. If you want CPE codes, we have the CPO codes. We have them from Worldwide ERC, and there's the GMS and the CRP codes. We have codes from HRCI, and we have codes from SHRM, courtesy of our good friends at Rocket Mortgage and indeed our good friends at Worldwide ERC. Now, next week, I want you to promise me something. Next week, I want you to put the date in your diary. Next week, do not miss this show. Every show is amazing. But next week, I have to tell you, we have got the most senior person we have ever had on the show before. We are super excited that our very special guest next week is a man, the Honourable David M. Walker, who was the Controller General of the United States. So, I mean, that's a very, very senior position in the legislative branch of US government, where basically he ran a thing called the General Accountability Office that was responsible for oversight of the entire US federal budget. David Walker has worked with or met pretty much every US president in recent years. He's had appointments with Ronald Reagan, with George H. Bush, with Bill Clinton, with George W. Bush, with Donald Trump in his first presidency, and indeed with Joe Biden. So this guy knows government. He has worked at the heart of the legislative branch, as I said, as the head of the as Comptroller General of the United States, but also in the executive branch of US government, where he's held such prestigious appointments as being the Assistant Director of Medicare, Trustee of Medicare and Social Security, and also an Assistant Director at the Department of Labour. He's also been the chair of the Audit Committee of the United Nations. So, super interesting guy, super interesting perspective, and he's going to be talking about what happens to mobility in the world that we are living in. So do make sure you join us next week for Mobility Meets Washington. Meanwhile, what's been going on in our world over the last 7 days? Well, let's find out. Let's have a look at our breaking news. So there we have it. Lots of exciting breaking news. Congratulations to everybody who's been promoted. Everybody's who got a new job. And if you're looking for a job, well, there's loads of roles out there. So hopefully there's something out there for you. If you've got some news you want to share next week, or indeed you've got a job that you want to get publicized, then let us know and we will do whatever we can to promote your opportunity or to share your news. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to be talking immigration, and who better to talk to us about what's been going on in the wonderful world of immigration than Julia Onslow Cole. So you know really how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome onto our stage Julia Onslow Cole. Hi, Julia.
Hi. Hi, Brian.
Whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm in Dubai today. Yes, I'm in Dubai.
Okay. And is there a UAE theme to your immigration?
Yes. So there's definitely a UAE theme. So there's lots of news about how everyone wants to come and live in Dubai. And that's very kind of you, Bindu. Well, and why wouldn't they? Because it's absolutely beautiful here. But I was with the British Embassy this morning, and they were saying how important trade was between the UK and the UAE. They were saying it was the UK's 15th largest export market, worth about more than 15 billion.
Wow.
So lots of companies are trying to export to Dubai. We're seeing lots of companies actually set up their global headquarters here. So we know there's a regional headquarters initiative in Saudi, but this is, a place for global headquarters. And what we're seeing is this big drive. And one of the phenomena is that everybody would like a golden visa. And so we're seeing talent that's attracted here, but they would like this golden visa. And the golden visa system has really changed over time. And actually, it's become slightly harder to obtain a golden visa. And if you want to obtain one on the basis of employment, then you have to show that you've been here working for about 6 months. So it's not as easy as it was, but that is the preferred route for talent coming in. And it's quite interesting because we think there's about 500,000 golden visa holders. And when you in Dubai, and when you think the population's about 3.79 million and growing, actually that's a lot of golden visa holders.
Number. And what does it cost a golden visa?
I actually don't know, I'm afraid. I actually don't know, so I could find out, but I don't think I don't.
I'm trying to think what the revenue is that it's creating for the.
Oh, really?
UAE.
I honestly don't think that the Dubai government really focuses on that at all, actually. I think it's more about, is that a really good system to attract talent, the type of talent that companies need if they're setting up global headquarters. But there have been a couple of recent changes, and I just wanted to point these out to everyone. So as everyone knows, there's free zones in Dubai. And if you work in a free zone, you always used to have to stay in that free zone. Even if your company had a subsidiary in the mainland, you shouldn't really be working in that subsidiary, but people sort of did, but non-compliantly. And now one of the things that's happened is that they're opening things up. So if you want to work in the mainland, as well as the free zone, you can, but you do need a license. And there's different options. You can buy licenses for entities or for activities. But there's an approved list. And by March of next year, everyone should be really compliant. And really, you'll have to investigate this. You'll have to look and you'll have to see, where you should be, what you can do and make sure that all of this is in order. And one of the things I was speaking to Abir Husseini, who's our partner in Dubai this morning, and I was saying to her, oh, do you think there's a risk that there might be audits and compliance audits like we're seeing in Saudi? And she said, no, she didn't think there would be. But in the past, because Dubai is such a friendly place for work, they're quite happy to, allow certain things. But now there's a proper route. Companies must follow that proper route, because obviously now the government's gone to all the trouble of creating a framework to allow working in the free zone and in the mainland. You really should comply with that. So I think that's really important. And then the second thing I wanted to say is the blue visa, which is a really progressive visa for people who are actively working on sustainability. They, when they come to the end of their work, they're allowed 180-day period, which is very generous. It's a very generous period. So that's been introduced for them, so they can stay here and they don't have to exit the country until the end of that period. And this was a visa that was introduced in May 2024. And then the last thing I was going to say is that if you're a blue residency holder, or you're a foreign spouse of an Emirati, then you can spend as much time as you want overseas without breaking your residency. So that's a very good concession that's just been brought in. So that's also very positive.
Wow.
Oh, thank you, Katia. That's really kind. She's telling us how much it is.
It is. I didn't actually really mean the cost of the visa itself. I meant, is it one where you have to invest in the country?
No.
There's no investment requirement. It's not like, well, you've got to own a certain amount of property or something.
No, not at all. No. I've told so many people my golden visa story, but I got my golden visa because I was working in Dubai and I was working remotely, and I was worried that I didn't actually conform. And this was just when the golden visa came in. So I gave my CV and my husband's CV, and he's a pediatric neurologist. So I gave it to the government. And then I told my husband, you're going to be my dependent for immigration purposes. I thought that was really funny, and I quite liked the idea of that. So I went to the department to get my visa. And then I said to this nice man, I said, well, here I am, I'm getting my golden visa, and this is my husband, and he's going to be my dependent. And then this lovely man said, no, he's not. No, he's got a much better CV than you. In fact, we couldn't possibly let him do that. So we've given him a golden visa. So I always tell that story as to say, like, what government around the world could you imagine just, gives a dependent their own visa like that without even asking?
Well, they knew that they weren't going to mess with you, Julia. And so they
no, it makes people very loyal.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, we're going to move on, Julia. That's an amazing update. Really, really appreciate it. And all the time you give us. We're going to move on to a Benevo update now, but we're going to do it slightly differently to normal. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing on both Matt Cheek from Benevo, but also Amanda Santamour, who is our Klaviyo main guest, because she's also a Benevo client, and we're going to be talking a bit about the interaction there. So you know how it works, please. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's say a big, big thank you to Julia Onslow-Cole, and welcome to our stage, Matt Cheek and Amanda Santamour. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
To the show.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome. And Matt, always good to see you, Matt.
You too, Brian.
And also, I know you're in Spain, so you suffered the power outage.
That's right. But we're back, as you can see. There's light.
Absolutely. Well, we're very, very pleased this show didn't go out yesterday when there was no power, and we hope everybody is well in your family after what must have been a very difficult day yesterday. So we're going to move on. Amanda, we're going to be talking to you in a bit about how to build a mobility program from scratch. But I wanted to start off by just finding out a little bit about Klaviyo. Just give people a flavor of what the company is, what the company does, and the sort of people that work for Klaviyo, if you like, the culture of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that lead up. So Klaviyo is a pretty young company that values ambition, self-starter mentality, and equitable employee experience. We have very driven population, and to meet that culture and that expectation, it's super important for us to make sure that our programs reflect that energy as well.
Okay, and just for people who don't know, what does the company do?
Yeah, we do. The simplest way to explain this is email marketing. So we help businesses large and small reach their clients and gather data to make sure that they're making the impact and getting their sales to who needs the product.
Okay, and you're quite a young company, aren't you? I mean, is it 2013 you were founded?
Yes, founded in 2013 and IPO'd in 2023.
Okay, so 10 years from startup to IPO. And then, so obviously amazing changes go through the company. We're going to be getting into that because that's, if you like, what we're going to be talking about later about how, if you like, the growing pains of the company, and especially in the sort of the pre-IPO period and getting everything sorted. But you mentioned that they're a self-starter population. I mean, how else would you describe them? Sort of agile? I mean, what are the sort of words you're using to sort of look at this population of people that work for Klaviyo that we're dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say agile is a great descriptor there, and very rapid moving. We're 0 to 100 pretty quickly.
Cool. Okay. And I know you chose Benevo as your technology support, and obviously we're very appreciative. But I suppose the question, why? What brought you to Benevo? What was it that you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that self-starter, ambitious culture, and we're a company that values high tech and direct access to resources. And I think for us, Benevo was a clear choice in meeting the company where they were in the program that existed, as well as that culture. Benevo has that self-service aspect to it, and really high-tech data for both the relocating employee as well as the internal stakeholders like myself and others, executing moves on behalf of and along with our employees.
So what was it like before you used that Benevo technology? What was the sort of the before and after?
Yeah. So like I said, we met the company where they were, and where they were was a lump sum based program, and it does suit the company. It suits for what we are going for and where we expect to be taking the company as we go forward. But as anyone here who's maybe built a mobility program or partnered with an RMC or just moved folks in general or moved themselves, the cash can only go so far. And we wanted to make sure that, well, yes, we can take that program that exists. We wanted to make sure we took it and improved upon it, kept our employees safe, covered our duty of care, and helped our employees not only with the fiscal aspect, but also the planning and education aspect. So the Benevo resources and the functionality within the platform really help kind of fill that gap.
Okay. And Matt, I need to bring you into the conversation. You're sitting there very politely and quietly, but I want to sort of hear a bit about it from your perspective. So tell me, Matt, I mean, you were sort of working with Amanda, but from the, if you like, the other side of the telescope, from the Benevo's perspective. So what were you seeing when you saw the sort of, if you like, the journey from before to now?
Well, I think we kind of heard exactly what Amanda just outlined there, which is where the business was. And, I think we know from our experience that rarely do employees end up completely doing things on their own. There will be some who go at it and are really individual and entrepreneurial in that. But oftentimes, informal support ends up coming back on the talent team and ends up coming back on other HR resources within the company. And as you heard, Klaviyo has been on quite a growth journey. They are a nimble organization, and there really needed to be a fill-in to make sure that resources weren't being taken away from the recruitment team, from onboarding teams, and that employees were getting what they needed. So we really focused on making sure that we could deliver a modern experience. So for young tech workers expect a modern tech-driven experience to help themselves out. They need self-service, and they want to be seamlessly connected to vetted vendors when they need them. They want destination info in their hands. And when it comes to pain points like making sure that they have enough cash to pay for the things they need to pay for, they don't want that to be a painful process of filling forms and emailing people and waiting for money to clear. And so making sure that everything was built to be instant. So if they have a cash need, they can immediately get the cash. If they need to find out details about the destination, they can do that right on the app. And uniquely on Benivo, they can also benefit from the insights that other employees who have moved with Klaviyo beforehand have shared onto the platform. We call that the colleague insights. And I think that was something that really appealed to the wider.
Let me drill down into that, Matt, because I want to bring Amanda back into the conversation. So tell me, Amanda, from your perspective, what was the functionality that was really critical that you really wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt sort of touched on the three that we focused on and that really helped us sell the program internally. And the primary benefits here for that self-service are the peer-reviewed insights about destinations, and along with that, the vetted vendor and service provider access. So within the Benivo platform, our relocating employees can see, who's moved to the destination that they're moving to and what resources they used to get there and what resources they used on the ground there, whether it be temporary housing or for international moves, banking and how to set up your social security card or the equivalent therein. As well as just, we use this moving company, we really liked them, or, we had a pack and ship and here's where we accessed it through. So employees can get to that information on their own through the platform and really build a bespoke move that meets them or their needs and the needs of their family where they are without us needing to put an abundance of nuance in our policies. So for us, the destination resources and the insights, for the peer-reviewed insights, are a huge benefit. And then as Matt mentioned, the pay later feature through Benivo helps us bridge the gap between offer and onboard, because we do maintain a lump sum based program and we pay that out through our payroll. And so provisioning benefits in that way does often present a delay between onboard and that initial paycheck. And so Pay Later provides our relocating employees access to advanced funds to get them started on that move or even get that move completed without fees or interest and without an extra cost to the company and extra work on the back end to sort of coordinate payouts through a third-party vendor and the fees that would be associated with that.
Do you find that helps with the recruitment process, either internal or external, the fact that there is this pay later facility?
Absolutely. And like I said, it helped us sort of meet the company where they were, because prior practice may have been a little inconsistent, but prior practice was that lump sum. So we were able to sell it internally by saying we're not changing anything in how we do this, but we are changing and providing better resources and support to our employees. And so it was sort of an everybody wins situation with our internal stakeholders and with our talent acquisition team in making, what may have worked simply before work even better for us and better for our employees.
So tell me a bit more about that. I mean, how does that sort of, sorry, Matt, you wanted to come in.
I was just going to add the detail that, in the name of operational efficiency and helping the talent organization, operate well, while everything is self-service and you can do it on your phone, for those employees who do want to discuss something or get a little bit of extra support, Benivo does offer 24/7 customer service within the app. So we can provide that kind of frontline support experience to recruits, so that we're providing all the tools and resources, but also the customer service as a frontline for Q&A and destination and move support that then again doesn't have to come back onto the talent team.
Okay, we're going to move on in a minute to talk about how the program was actually built from scratch. But just one last question, if I may, whilst we're just talking about this segment, is we've talked about the mobility team at Klaviyo working with Benevo. But there's also another party involved in this, which is the broader talent and HR teams. How has it worked to help educate the talent and HR teams as to, the importance of moving?
Yeah, it's been a journey, and improving on what existed previously and expanding our internal resources and our resources for our employees. Having Benevo as our partner has been extremely helpful because this is with an evolving program and global expansion. What we put in place does change pretty rapidly, and so we mentioned agility and wanting an agile program. Benevo helps Klaviyo to meet those needs and maintain ongoing support for our internal employees through coaching and education for our stakeholders, whether that be talent acquisition, hiring managers, even our finance and budgeting teams. And then we check in on that pretty regularly. How are things working? We leverage the reporting tools within Benevo to say, hey, we're seeing this feedback, we might need to tweak this, or hey, this is a really well-reviewed resource. We may want to emphasize this as we iterate on the program and build it forward. And so partnering together to get that data gathering and to share out that information, not just for myself, but my internal teams, has been a game changer for the program.
Cool. We've actually had a comment here from Ferzine, so I just want to sort of just bring that up before we move on. She says, Ferzine, previous guest on the show, she said, in general, before mobility was less than seamless, manual processes, fragmented data, and long waits for tax estimates, no transparency in cost. In short, clunky. Now, Benevo can be a game changer with real-time cost transparency, powerful reporting, simplifying complex processes, and eliminating bottlenecks, and so much more. So that's Ferzine's comment, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, does that ring true from your perspective, Amanda?
Absolutely. And, Ferzine mentioned the real-time cost transparency. That's another feature within Benevo that has been a great resource for our program in terms of getting cost estimates in real time at the time you need them, instead of waiting and fragmenting your data and seeking an estimate from one vendor over here and another over here. Everything is centralized. And, I think Ferzine's right here, the absolute game changer with the resources that are available to us and to our employees.
Okay, so we're going to move on now, because I want to move on to talk about actually how you built a program from scratch. So we'll move away, if you like, the focus from the Benevo technology to actually how you built the program itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you go, Matt, say goodbye to you.
Thank you, everybody.
We're going to find out all about how Amanda and the Klaviyo team built a global mobility program from scratch. So let's just run that video as we move on to our next segment. So, it's Amanda again. Nice to see you again. You're back. So, Amanda, you've done this not once, you've done this twice. So you've done this. Tell me, if you like, a bit about your career journey and where you've done this.
Absolutely. And I think probably a lot of our attendees can relate to this. I did not get into mobility with intention. It was just something that sort of fell onto within HR, and I'm willing to bet quite a few folks on the broadcast can relate to that. But it's been quite a journey and a very interesting line of work, and so critical and important, no matter how niche it is. And whether you're a dedicated global mobility resource internally or part of a broader HR team that focuses on the function itself. It's been a really interesting decade plus in learning the ins and outs of what it takes to move folks within and across borders, and maintaining company compliance and employee safety throughout. So yeah, I've been in this for over a decade, and I've built 2 fresh programs that I'm very proud of, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it today.
Okay, so because you joined Klaviyo shortly before IPO, so presumably, when the company was young and, early days, things were a bit sort of, we've got to get things done, but maybe not quite as formal as they became. And then you go through the IPO process, and presumably the eyes of the outside world and the bankers are on you to make sure that everything is absolutely tickety-boo. So was that the sort of the driver to actually get the sort of, get the program sort of, really sort of sorted? Is that why they recruited you in the first place? Is that when you came in?
I think that's certainly part of it. We also had a roadmap of global expansion on the horizon, and Klaviyo is very focused on employee experience and making sure that we're doing things right and safely and efficiently. So they decided at that time that it was definitely pertinent to put together a formal global mobility program, get our ducks in a row, and be ready for what was next. With the IPO and then what came after.
And you also, I think, we're going through a period of, I think you described it as hyper growth at the time. So tell us a bit about that.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, with the global expansion and the IPO, we also pursued some aggressive hiring and really increased the headcount internally. And of course, we have across cultures like a lot of hybrid work styles, but there's a big focus on the value of in-person work as we built out that hypergrowth and that global expansion. And so leveraging relocation and support and just understanding mobility from the corporate level for our business leads and again our internal stakeholders was critical for making that growth happen in a timely manner and getting everyone and everything on target.
So when you first turned up 2 months before IPO, you were there. Was it then? What were the things you were initially looking for at the very beginning? Maybe even before you got to the stage of having a plan. Presumably there were sort of like red flags that you were looking to make sure that everything was right. What were your key focuses at the very, very earliest days?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we say building a program from the ground up or a fresh global mobility program, but I think it's safe to say you're never really at zero. Every company is going to be a little bit different in terms of what's happened before and where they're looking to take it. But even if you don't have a proper global mobility program or the structures in place, there's still mobility matters that have happened prior and that may be on the horizon. You're never at zero. You always want to, it can be very tempting to forge ahead and put pieces in place. But for me, it was a matter of getting a handle on what we've inherited, what's worked before, what our strategy was before, and what the strategy will be as we move forward.
So at some point, presumably in the early days, you were sort of thinking to yourself, well, what does the end game look like? What's the strategy look like? I think it was Yogi Berra who famously once said, if you don't know where you're going, the chances are you'll end up someplace else. And it's about actually having an idea of that vision as to where it is. So tell us a bit about that. What was the sort of, the vision that you could then put in the project plan to get you to? What were you looking for?
Yeah, and that's a great quote. Not only if you don't know where you're going, you can end up lost, but also if you don't know where your folks are, where your people are, they can get lost, and you can lose talent, whether literally or metaphorically. So for me, it was a matter of getting a handle on where we had headcount, where were people, how did they get there, what has been promised, and what do we need to keep an eye on as we build out the program. It's, you can join a company when they're at hypergrowth, or you can join a company when they're just focused on compliance, or a bit of both. And so for us, we knew we were looking to forge ahead and get a lot of expansion, fill a lot of headcount, across the globe in our new entities. But even if that's not the journey that your company or you are on, I think it's a matter of sitting down and saying, where are our people and where do we want them to go, no matter how many it is.
Okay. So the first stage was, if like an audit, to actually say, well, who have we got and are they on the right visas or whatever the issues might be? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for us, it wasn't just visas, it's just right to work compliance in general across our entities. And, depending on what your global mobility program or your HR program or internally handles, you may or may not need to worry about that. But for us, we wanted to make sure, hey, do we have complete compliance, the critical documentation? If someone comes calling, can we produce documentation that demonstrates that we are compliant, we have everything we need? And not just those right to work documents, right? I mentioned we've got to figure out where folks are. Do we have anyone on what we would call assignment that maybe prior to a proper program, the word assignment may not have been used, but where are folks and what's been promised of them? Are they receiving ongoing benefits? Do we need to expect repatriation and future benefits, future visa renewals? And especially I think in the world of immigration, it's not just the right to work or the visa, it's the long-term strategic path. So the first goal is just that big initial data intake for compliance strategy. Where are folks and where are we looking to send them?
Okay. And you've got a team you're working with. I mean, maybe we can just show some of the team now and give them let's give a shout out to the team. So here we've got, who are we looking at now, Amanda?
Wonderful. So we've got my broader team. We've got our Joanna from our legal department, my manager Rory, our head of HR operations Jesse, and then our HR operations associate Kiara. And these folks really, and there's the whole team. This is IPO day, so the whole company-wide was a sea of, we call that color spicy salmon. So there was quite a lot of that orange color across our campuses. As we celebrated the IPO. And so you've got a kind of broad view of the HR and total rewards teams there as well. And that's one of our HR outings. Yeah.
That's a stretchy day out, is it, at the Crazy Golf?
Yes.
Wow.
Halloween for you. Look at that.
Okay. Well, we probably embarrassed some people now, but great photos. So anyway, so Amanda, you obviously approached it in a very thorough and comprehensive way. And I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that there was a 30, 60, 90, 365 plan. So just tell us about, and then we'll drill down into it, but just tell us in overall terms, what is the concept of doing a 30, 60, 90, 365?
Yeah, so I think, and this can vary. What's true for me and my program and my companies may not be true for everyone. But for me, like I said, that first step, that critical compliance is the most important. But in tandem, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, you're going to be building the long-term roadmap, right? So while you're data gathering and figuring out where everyone's sitting and what documentation you have, there's a need to put systems in place kind of as quickly as possible, even if they're short term, to make sure you've got a handle on intake, figuring out, hey, what does onboard look like and how do we know people are moving? What are they being provided? Covering, what I would call a stopgap to make sure that you can maintain that data. You're not creating new situations that may not be sustainable or may set dangerous precedent. And then moving forward to data gathering, figuring out long-term, over time, once you have that stopgap in place, what's working, what's not, what do you need to calibrate and update, and how can you align with your internal stakeholders to get buy-in on those changes before you make your full drafts and launch your program as a whole.
With building the program, how iterative was it? How much was it that you had the idea of this is what the program should look like? Or then how much did that sort of vary as you were going through the process until you got to the final position?
I would say it was fairly iterative. I think maybe 2 to 3 sort of steps in the process in terms of a draft and a data gather, assess, and then redraft or update. And I would break that down into 2 parts for us. Like I said, that compliance was the bigger focus for us. And so a focus on immigration and the systems we put in place to monitor intake and, sort of update what sort of visa scenarios we are up against was the most important part for us. So that was immediate, putting those parameters in place. And then from there, adjusting those, making them a little bit more lax or more strict, depending on the geography. And as anyone on this call knows, and as Julia has told us week over week, those rules change too. So you're going to have an iterative immigration program, and you want to make sure you're training your internal teams to respond to that agility with strength rather than seeing it as a detriment. And so for us, the immigration piece was, it is kind of continuously iterative. And then the relo, we did that stopgap program to make sure, like, hey, moving forward, we need contract documentation outlining what the terms of these moves are, what people are receiving, consistency, and then data, getting the data from those contracts, from that new program put in place. We took 6 months to see, hey, what is working? Are these numbers making sense for us? Are these packages working for the business? Is the budget available? And then taking what we had, the stopgap we'd done and kind of improving upon it, making it work, and then launching it full term.
And did you have people that were sort of challenging, saying, well, actually, we don't need to have a strategy because we've actually already do it this way and it's fine? And similarly, did you have people that you had to grandfather, the saying, well, actually, we're changing it, but actually these rules don't apply to you? Or did you have those sorts of hurdles to get over in the early days?
Absolutely. And, you talk about legacy inherited cases, that's that first stage, right? That compliance and that discovery phase of figuring out where folks are and what's been promised, and getting the documentation for those, and understanding that before you put a proper program in place, you're going to have one-off scenarios that maybe set a dangerous precedent, or just a sort of uncomfortable conversations for your future. It may not be actually dangerous, but as anybody who gets on those calls with employees who say, hey, can I go work wherever I'd like, and can you pay for it? Dangerous precedent being those scenarios. So we did have quite a lot of legacy one-offs that we needed to document and make sure we had a go-forward plan for those. And then, of course, change management is always going to be a thing. I think that's why most of us here have the roles we do, is helping the company understand the benefit. And I think I said earlier when we were talking about implementing Benevo, everybody wins, right? Like we get our data, our employees get their support, and at a very low cost per head count to do that. So we were able to sort of leverage the data we got from that stopgap and interim program, and say, hey, we're making slight changes, but we met them where they were, right? We stuck with the lump sum program. So we just sort of made some tweaks on, we're not calling it a sign-on bonus, we're calling it relocation, and this is how it's being paid out, and this is why it's important for us to track this. And that conversation is ongoing, right? Especially when you inherit a program that maybe did not have a lot of structure, or was just accustomed to doing things a little bit differently. And so I think for me, and I think probably very relatable for folks, there's a lot of relationship building. And I think anything in the people space that's going to be true for us, right? We need to make sure that our stakeholders know us and trust us and have the data in hand to know we're not just making changes to be difficult. There's a long-term goal here.
Okay, so we talked about this sort of plan, and it was basically different phases. Let's go back to the beginning, phase one. What did you do, or what should you do if you're building a program from scratch in that sort of situation? What should you do in the first 30 days? What's phase one?
Yeah, if you can, and I say 30 days, it's loose, it can be a different number for different organizations, but for us, 30 days was that critical compliance. We needed to make sure that everyone working for us, we had the right documentation, that our I-9 team was equipped to process I-9s, and our global right to work team for non-US locations is appropriately checking documents to make sure that we have everything on file that demonstrates that we're allowed to and able to employ these folks, and gathering just sort of all that red tape, right? Sort of the unfun part, right? Where's the documentation? Where are the contracts? What sort of loose policy structure did we have before? Was there anything? And so just getting hands on what was true before, what's true right this very moment, and then planning for what you do need for the existing incumbent or legacy employees.
Okay, so that's the first phase, which is basically doing, as you put it, the unfun stuff. Just finding out
Yeah.
what you've got, So the next phase 2, which might be the next 60 days or whatever the period is, but the next phase, what do you do then, having dug the dirt?
Yeah, so this part, I think, of course, compliance is critical. You don't ever want any government agency knocking at your door. But that interim standardization, whatever you put in place to make sure that you're not taking in new headaches or scenarios that can't be supported. So for me, that was getting our recruiting team guidance on how to screen and recruit immigration sponsorship cases, both internally and externally, if we're talking to new hires versus if we're talking to someone who may be moving from one geo to another. How we equipping the TA team to say, hey, these are the visa life cycles. Here's the strategic long-term plan for these visas. Here's the cost, and making sure that we're equipping hiring teams, recruiting managers, compensation, finance, everyone, those stakeholders that make those initial decisions on who we bring on, making sure they're equipped to make a well-informed decision, and so that there's no surprises down the line. So just sort of standardizing what everyone's behaviors are for the short term.
Okay, we've had an interesting question come in from Ali, so I'll just put it up there. He puts, hey Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some great insights. Were there any specific practices from other global mobility programs that you decided not to include when setting up your own?
Great question, Ollie. So I think I tried to meet the business where it was. I wasn't looking to necessarily leave out anything. I was more looking to say what's working here and how can we enhance it, right? So for us, like our mobility program is pretty simplified. So we were not looking to take that and go the other way and say we're going to do this robust list of specific benefits, and provide different piecemeal sort of support. We wanted to stick with what had worked for us before. So it's not really a matter of leaving things out for us. It was just a matter of finding what was going to sell us internally and make the most sense for the company.
Okay. So tell me through that. We've talked a bit about the second phase. Tell me then, we're getting a bit mature. We're now getting into the sort of the next 90 odd days. Tell us what we're doing at that sort of phase.
So yeah, I'd say 90 days and even beyond is data gathering, right? Whatever interim systems you put in place or whatever ongoing scenarios you have in progress, getting a handle on that data and seeing what's working and what isn't, right? So what you put in place between 30 and 60 days or whatever timing works for you is likely not going to be the full long-term roadmap, but it is a great starting point to get some data. So we used the remainder of those months to figure out, hey, who's moving? What's our headcount like? What is this costing? Which parts of the business need more, need less? And where are they heading, right? So do we have native language specific roles in a certain location that may require international relocation versus domestic? And what does that package look like versus what we're accustomed to? Just really getting a handle on the numbers and the program effectiveness to figure out what the long term may be and what needs to be changed with your interim program for the full launch.
Okay, so you mentioned full launch. I mean, was there actually a launch? I mean, when you got there, what did it look like as a launch?
So for us, we launched, I mean, and I'm going to use the term launch loosely because I think for us, like I said, this was just an iterative process. We took what existed, we improved on it, we added a few things, we tweaked a few things. But for us, we launched, we had the policy approved and published, policies, I should say. We had the procedural documentation. So for behind the scenes, for our stakeholders, the interviewing teams, the budgeting and finance teams, support documents for each of them to understand the change from what was before and what will be now. And then our final drafted sort of compliance documents, whether it be contracts or assignment letters, relocation agreements and clawbacks, and then of course the systemized integration. So leveraging maybe our recruiting system or our HR system to make sure that we've made as many efficiencies as possible. So we put those things all together and picked a date along with our Benevo. We had done an RFP in the interim. And so we aligned our Benevo kickoff with all of those changes and trained up our internal stakeholders so they knew, hey, we were doing phase 1, now we're doing phase 1.1 for that launch.
And what about the sort of, in terms of the consensus building, at what point during the process were you engaging with the various stakeholders, i.e. HR, the line, individual employees who might have been moving or had moved, to sort of just, acclimatize the proposed policy? At what point was that going on?
It's fairly constant, but you want to make sure you're building those relationships, building that trust, and also, traditionally, global mobility programs are pretty small. Whereas if you can partner with your internal stakeholders and get that help and collaboration across functions, that's always helpful. But I think primarily for that data gathering phase, when you're getting a handle on the reporting and the research and the effectiveness and just so all the metrics, I suppose, would be the best way to say that. When you have the metrics, you can go to your stakeholders and say, hey, here's the actual information we have on the program. So it's not just me coming at you, telling you what's going to work. It's here's the data we have. What does this mean to you for your goals, for your program, for your line of the business, for what's next? And, here's some proposed options that we can adjust and tweak. And what does it sound like for you, right? So we're not making decisions in a silo. We're calibrating with the business and with our stakeholders to get that buy-in well in advance of the launch. So the launch is, and that's why I say I use launch very loosely. Folks knew this was coming. They had a hand in these decisions. And I think involving them not only makes your work easier in terms of understanding, maybe filling gaps, understanding what different teams need, maybe where data reporting, tracking needs to go, but also if they have a hand in it, they're going to take some ownership of it themselves, and they'll be ready for you when that change comes.
And tell me about the RFP process, because quite often in these situations, because there's no formal policy in place, people have got any number of different favored friends as vendors, and there's no sort of huge centralization or thought gone into the strategy of if you like the supply chain. How did you approach that? How did you approach the whole sort of RFP process?
Yeah, we like I said, we met the business where they were and enhanced what existed. So we proposed, we put forth a few different options: traditional RMCs, varying levels of tech-focused programs. And of course, as I think many folks can relate to, it does come down to brass tacks at the end of it. Like what pricing are we looking at, and what's the experience that our employees are going to have? And for us, it was also, we're not looking to make huge changes. So a traditional RMC was not the right choice for us for the program that we built currently. We may evolve and add in the future, but making that small change with the calibration with our stakeholders meant that we did not need something extremely robust in terms of white glove hands-on, although we do have that option with Benevo. We more put forth the sort of self-service, tech-focused resources for our RFP.
Yeah, cool. So we're into our last sort of 5 minutes or so. So I just want to start looking forward to where this is going. I mean, you've done something quite remarkable in terms of building this program, and kudos to you. Tip my hat to you for what you've achieved. Where do you want it to go? What is the longer term vision now?
Internally at Klaviyo, I'm very excited. So, this is pretty new still. We're still, we've done the data gathering, we've implemented, and we've launched, but that's never ending, right? So we're back to data gathering again, and we're using the resources. For us, we're using the metrics we have in our Benevo platform, as well as our internal metrics, to see, again, what's working and what's not. This brand new program is not going to be 100% right out the gate. So I'm excited to see what we can iterate on for version 2.0 and where that's going to take us as a company, as the company takes off and expands into new geographies and opens new entities and takes on, we've just recently launched a new product. And I think we're in a great stage for that continued hyper growth. And I'm excited to continue supporting the business and seeing what's going to work for us in the future.
Okay. And for people out there in the audience who might be one day sort of doing something similar, what would be the key learnings you'd share? Things that, you know, you've learned that you say you must do this, and also things maybe you've learned the hard way. Say, well, actually, don't make the mistake I made. Don't do that. What are the learnings that you would share with somebody else facing the same situation today?
I'd say no matter how big your global mobility team is, whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 20, don't try to do it on your own. And that can be on your own as that full team of 20. There's so many matters within global mobility that overlap with other parts of the business, and whether they be the people and HR areas or just the broader business. Don't try to do it on your own. Make sure that you're leveraging your internal and external resources, partner up with your vendors, and find, look in unique spaces for some of the things you need, right? Like we leverage our background check platform for some of the stuff we need. Look for creative approaches and partner internally, because it's going to be a lot of work and you don't want to do it on your own.
Okay. The questions come in from Michael Burnett. He says, which data points did you leverage to make the most significant change impact once up and running?
For us, I think it really did come down to making sure that we're using our budget appropriately, right? So we moved from a very inconsistent, non-policy driven program to just putting in place like, hey, if you have this one employee and they have this manager wants to offer them package A, this manager wants to offer them package C. It's inconsistent and makes it difficult for us to budget and plan for. So for us, you just breaking down the dollar signs, projections, budget estimates, and then of course up against what's the cost per employee and how you want to support them. And then taking that information and further projecting it for ROI. How quick can we get someone in seat? How long are they staying with us? So really playing those out. So it's not just a story of because for me, like duty of care is like the most important thing. Duty of care and compliance are my key focus, but that may not be the right focus for the business. They may want to see just dollars and investment and return. To make sure that we've really got the long-term program set up appropriately, and we're not just spending money on things that don't make sense.
Okay, last question, because we are nearly out of time. You've done both. Earlier in your career, you ran a mature program, and now twice, in fact, you've done startup work. And obviously, you're now getting to a stage with the Klaviyo program of it being, much more mature than it was at the beginning. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the fun of the startup, or do you prefer and indeed the sleepless nights of the startup program, I mean, or do you prefer the solidity and maturity of an established program?
Great question. I think I can see the benefits to both. You're absolutely right. For me, I really like coming in and meeting the business needs and building something fresh. I find that's, there's so much that does not allow for creativity in the immigration space in particular. It's very scientific and measured. This is where in building a program, you can really let that creativity shine and find the strategic alignments and really put that to use.
Well, on that point, I think we are pretty much out of time. Matt and Julia had to shoot off to other meetings, but our amazing producer Tally is with us. We are pretty much on the dot of our hour. So to everybody in the audience, we say a big goodbye. And we remind you that we've got, as I said, next week, probably the most senior person we've ever had on the show, the former Comptroller General of the United States, the Honorable David M. Walker. Do make sure you watch the show next week. It will be absolutely fascinating. As Tara says, thanks all. It's a team sport, she said. Robert saying great insights. Amanda, Robert Zeit saying great insights. Everybody, we are out of time, so we just say goodbye. Have a great week and take care, and we'll see you all again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.